All right. So, a common question and feedback that we get from workshop participants is we have had some discussion where it was pointed out that it is not helpful to just do work for minorities. Doing community work where white people are doing it for or helping people of color and the hierarchy that that creates. So, how does one help minorities that have been systematically held down and could use help with reading, getting affordable housing, etc., if that is not the right thing to do? How do we start reparations as the majority and protected class and or race?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things here to think about. First of all, um, I will often say it's important that we're not just doing for people of color, that if we really want to engage in authentic relationships, we need to seek opportunities to be in relationship with, not where we're simply a person with power doing for someone else. And so
Mhm.
the first thing I think is important is for us to seek opportunities to work alongside someone where there's not a power dynamic, where we are simply forming relationships, seeking to understand, learn from the perspective
Yeah.
of other people, and to be able to then better understand how to lift the voices. So rather than coming in as some white savior that can try to fix everything,
Mhm.
maybe the opportunity here is for us to first of all listen, to be sure we're clear on what kind of work needs to be done, and then come alongside people who are most directly affected by it, lifting up their voices, um, opening the doors that we might have
Mhm.
access to opening, so that those who need to be heard can be heard, and doing that in ministry with rather than in ministry for.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're absolutely right. And just one thing that I would add to that, you and I talk a lot in our workshops about racial identity development and white supremacy characteristics. And one of the first characteristics we talk about is perfectionism. And if we think back to the start of America and this idea of white and Black as a race, whiteness was seen as perfect, as pure. It was the standard. And a lot of that is still within us today, that idea of perfection. And so if oftentimes when white folks do enter or engage in equity work, it comes from that place of perfection, of um, unspoken hierarchy. And so often what happens is harm to communities of color because while the intention is good, there's still that underlying, you mentioned it, white saviorism complex.
Right.
And so the goal here is to come into this work with the understanding that you as a white person probably aren't going to do it perfectly, and that you need to follow the lead um, of people of color, and also in society you have power.
Mhm.
Society has given that to you, so how do you leverage that to amplify the voices?
Exactly.
So I
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
well said, Claire, thank you.
Yeah. And I think you said something about, I think there was something in that question about reparations. And
Mm,
again, the piece about the reparations, I think for us to think about is, again, not assuming that we know what the response should be, that we need to listen to those communities who have been impacted, to find out what are helpful ways for us to try to repair what's been done. What are helpful things that we can do to improve the lives collectively of people as we move forward. So again, not coming in assuming we know what those answers are and what to do, but listening to the people who've
yeah.
been affected, generations of people who've been affected.
Yeah, that's great. And we probably should do a separate dialogue around reparations. I think
Absolutely.
that's a good, yeah.
Absolutely.